clear. Alright, so welcome back to Lombere Tactical. I have some cool upgrades I want to show you for my Glock 34. If you went ahead and looked at my last video for the Glock 34, you will have seen the original upgrades that I made, but I will be sure to link it up here in the corner, so be sure to check it out if you haven't checked it out already. I'll go over those upgrades that I made to my Glock right now. So, during my first video, I first talked about how I went ahead and added the extended magazine. This is a 21 round capacity 9mm mag by PMag. I believe I got this during Freedom Week because I'm in California. You can only get these things during Freedom Week, so, you know. Now, another thing that I did was add in this Olight PL2 Valkyrie light. Now, this does a few things. Obviously, for home defense, it's awesome, right? You get to click it on, you get to hold it and let go for momentary, and you get to, press down these two paddles left and right together to get a stroke. So that's good, obviously, for home protection. That's one reason why I have it on here. But let's not forget, the Glock 34 is going to be my competition handgun. I am building this as my first competition gun, and I want to get into 3-gun and do all that fun stuff, right? So one function that this does, and maybe, I don't know all the rules with 3-gun yet. I haven't been in competition yet. Maybe they don't let you have a light on there. I don't know. If they don't, let me know down below in the comments because I don't know all the rules. But what I do know is that I want this on here for home protection, but I also want it on here for the other benefit of having some extra weight at the end of the barrel. And what that does is help mitigate the recoil. As it slides back, if you have more weight on the front, it's going to help even out a little bit of that recoil. So that's one benefit and one reason why I added it to the firearm. Now let me go ahead and show you the new upgrades that I just made. Alright. So, have you guys heard of the 25-cent trigger job? If not, be sure to look that up. It is a very popular modification that you can make on your Glocks that is super, super easy, and that is what I did here. So what I used was Mother's Aluminum Polish, I think is what it's called, and it's essentially just a polishing cream for metal components. And the reason why you want to do that is because on Glock, a lot of the components, or actually all of the components, are very dull looking, very gritty, and it leads to essentially a poor functionality of the trigger. You end up with just a decent trigger, right? There's nothing special about it. And I'm going to show you what I did here. The best that I can without dismantling the gun, of course. Okay, so if you see here, there are some shiny parts. Okay, you got some shiny parts back here. You got some shiny parts right here. You got some shiny parts on the side here. And you got a little bit of a shiny part right here. The little part that's sticking up here. I don't know all the names of every single part in here, so bear with me. But this right here is called the locking block. Okay, if you can see the locking block, it is very dull looking. It's very gritty. That is good representation of what all the components in here that are now shiny used to look like. Okay, now you don't need a special tool to do this. I literally did it with a Q-tip or mini Q-tips, and the Mother's aluminum polish. But essentially what you do is you go ahead and start polishing these parts. So this part right here is called the cruciform, I think is what it's called. And I forget what this part is here, but this presses up against the safety plunger. And if you look at the, well, you can't really see it, but underneath the cruciform is the trigger bar. Okay, that's polished as well. So all those components that are essentially touching other components and rubbing up against each other to allow the trigger functionality are all polished, including the components right here in the slide that interact with those components in the frame. So essentially this part up here that is sticking up that I polished, that's shiny right there, that goes ahead and rubs up against the safety plunger right here, which you can see is also reflective, polished to a mirror finish. Okay, and same thing back here, which is the sear that's part of the firing pin. Okay, so it's that one's gonna be very hard for you guys to see. But essentially, this component right here, if I can make it focus, okay? This component here has been polished. And that component rubs up against the cruciform here. So everything that interacts with each other for the trigger has been polished to a mirror finish. And the reason you do that is so that you have less friction in the gun and so that everything runs smoothly. Okay, that leads to a nicer trigger pull and a lighter trigger pull. Okay, that's because there's less friction, you have less force that's preventing the trigger from breaking, right? So that right there is a really significant upgrade to this gun that is so cheap. When it's called the 25-cent trigger job for a reason, okay? So I recommend everyone to do this upgrade. Look it up on YouTube. There's plenty of how-to videos on how to do that. So just follow those instructions. You don't need any special tools. Like I said, I went ahead and used a Q-tip and that polish. So it's super, super easy. And it gives you some of the best returns for that upgrade, right? You're getting a better trigger. Now, the other significant upgrade that I did is right here. So you'll notice on this slide, you can go ahead and see this guide rod right in front, okay? That guide rod, might notice, is not stock because the stock guide rod does not extend all the way to the front. So what that is an extended guide rod for the Glock 34. But it's not just any extended guide rod, of course, because I wouldn't buy anything that's just normal, right? So this is a uncaptured, pure tungsten guide rod for the Glock 34. And I got this from the Glock store in San Diego, California. They're a pretty famous place. You guys might have heard of them. I live in California, unfortunately, but fortunately for me, this store is local to me. So that was really easy for me to go get. And I'm going to compare it to the original guide rod so you guys can see the differences here. But I'm going to go ahead and talk about this one first, okay? So it's a little bit difficult to install compared to the original stock guide rod, and I'm going to explain why. And that's because it is the uncaptured version of a guide rod. So I'll show you what that means. So if I go ahead and start to take this out, you'll notice it's under a lot of tension here. So this is what it looks like right here, okay? Now you'll notice it's open at the end. The spring is fully decompressed, and that's because it's uncaptured. There's nothing holding it at the end here. But the guide rod itself comes out freely. Okay, this is what it looks like. And it is just pure tungsten, okay? This is really, really unique part for the Glock. This is a very robust guide rod, very heavy, okay? According to the Glock store, I don't have a scale myself, but according to the Glock store, this weighs about 100 grams. The original guide rod is right here. Okay, this is the original guide rod that comes in your Glock. This is just a very light spring, light in weight, and a plastic guide rod. So there is really no weight to this. It's gonna have a little bit of flex during recoil because it's plastic, okay? So there's some disadvantages to having this. The biggest disadvantage though is its weight. It is very light. This weighs 10 grams, okay? This weighs 100 grams. And I don't have a scale to show you, but I do have a different kind of way to show you. So follow me. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and drop these on my desk so you can hear the difference. And this is gonna be representative of their weight, essentially. So here's a plastic one, okay? That's plastic. No, from about the same height. This is the pure tungsten guide rod with the spring, on it. That is so much heavier, okay? You're talking about 100 grams versus 10 grams. Come on now. All right, so bring you back over here. Alrighty, so let me walk you through this, all right? When you have more weight on the front end of your gun, just like I explained with the O light being on the front of the gun, when there's more weight on the front, as the slide recoils, that extra weight in the front is going to help bring it down to help mitigate some of that recoil. Now, the Glock 34 just on its own shoots very well in terms of recoil because it's a fairly big gun, okay? But the more you can add to it to help improve these features, the better, especially for competition, because that's what this is. So this right here helps mitigate recoil. I can't wait till quarantine is over so that I can actually go out and shoot it at the range and actually do a side-by-side comparison between the two guide rods. So be sure to follow me for that video. As soon as I'm able to do it, I'm going to do that. And let me give you another great feature of this. The fact that it's uncaptured, meaning that the spring comes off, is that you can change the spring weights. Okay, now you might ask, what does that mean? All right, so the spring weight, this one is a 15-pound spring. Doesn't mean it weighs 15 pounds, okay? It means that, the tension of the spring is 15 pounds, right? That's gonna help with recoil. The stock weight, or the stock spring weight in Glock is about 17 pounds. So this one is a little bit lighter. The reason why I went for lighter is a couple of reasons, and I'll explain that. So the reason I went for lighter is I wanted to manipulate the slide a little bit easier. Okay, I wanted to be able to rack it a little bit easier than having the stock spring of 17 pounds. So that's one reason. Another reason is I don't necessarily shoot like the cheapest ammo. I might shoot typically Winchester or Federal, something like that. Those aren't, of course, the best ammos, but they're not the cheapest. Cheapest would be like Tulamo or something like that. So because I'm not shooting really hot ammo, I'm shooting standard target rounds with this gun, then you're going to have less recoil from the lighter loads, right? The ones that are not too hot, because these are just standard target rounds. If I was shooting hotter rounds, right, like more defensive rounds out of this gun, then you might want a heavier spring weight, right? Maybe something that's like 18, 20 pounds or so to help absorb some of that recoil. But since I don't typically shoot those out of this gun, I figured having the lighter spring weight of the recoil spring would be better for me. Okay, so however, if you are into reloading, or as I just mentioned, shoot primarily hot loads or lighter loads, depending on what you're doing, you can go ahead and change out the spring weights at the Glock store. So you can go ahead and buy a 13 pound, an 11 pound, or an 18 pound, a 20 pound, and so forth, spring, depending on what you're shooting. So you can really customize the experience of your shooting to what you're to the loads that you're shooting. So this is why if you're reloading your ammo, then you can go ahead and experiment maybe with different types of loads that you might want to shoot with to see what works better for you. And this right here would allow you to have that freedom of going through those different loads and getting the best experience you can possibly get out from it. So that's why I wanted to do this. I haven't started reloading yet, but I am going to get into it. So I wanted to show you guys these upgrades. This is just part one of me developing this into a competition gun, okay? Like I said, I want to do 3 gun. So there's going to be many more upgrades I'm going to be doing to this. So this is part one. Be sure to subscribe and hit the bell button so that you can be notified once the future videos come out in this series. I will go ahead and put this video in a playlist for the Glock 34 upgrades, so you can also check back in at any time and see what I've done to this firearm moving forward. Now, there's some future upgrades I will be making, which I'll go ahead and let you know. I am going to buy a spring kit for the trigger to further enhance the trigger on this, and I'm going to likely do a mag well, change out the slide, change out the barrel, and so forth. Okay, so a lot of things are coming. The trigger spring kit will likely be my next upgrade, so be sure to follow me there and see kind of the progression of this. So anyways, guys, thank you again for the support. Thank you for commenting down below and letting me know your guys' thoughts and questions. I love talking with you guys, and see you guys at the next one. Bye.